The wind carried a sound too soft to belong to coyotes. Ezekiel Kane reined his horse to a halt, dust swirling at its hooves. The last light of the sun bled against the horizon, painting the desert in bruised red and dying gold. He tilted his head, listening. There was again a voice, cracked and broken, straining against the wind. "Please." He dismounted, boots sinking into sand and gravel. The air smelled of dry sage and old timber as he followed the sound toward the sagging silhouette of an abandoned barn. Its boards groaned like bones in the wind, each nail threatening to tear loose. Inside, shadows pooled thick as tar. His eyes adjusted slowly, catching movement. A figure slumped beneath a splintered beam, rope cut deep into pale wrists. Her lips trembled as she forced out the words, "Free me." Ezekiel stepped closer, the boards moaning under his weight. Her dress was torn, edges crusted with dirt, her face streaked with sweat. The smell of blood lingered faintly, sharp and coppery, mingling with dust. He drew the knife from his belt and sliced through the rope. The fibers snapped with a brittle twang, falling to the dirt. She sagged forward into his arms, her breath shuddering. Only then did he see it. Marks burned and carved into her skin. Not just the rope's bite, but lines jagged and deliberate, circling her wrists like cruel bracelets. Strange shapes, symbols that seemed to crawl in the lantern light, leaking through the barn's cracks. Ezekiel froze, his hand gripping her shoulder. His gut tightened. These weren't the wounds of thieves, nor the carelessness of men drunk on cruelty. There was something older, something etched with purpose. Her eyes opened, wide and hollow, the color of river stone. Tears had dried in tracks across her cheeks. She caught his sleeve, fingers trembling, nails broken and raw. "They'll come back," she whispered. The wind shoved through the barn's broken boards, slamming the door against its frame with a thunder that echoed like a gunshot. Ezekiel's horse outside stamped nervously, snorting at the sudden noise. He lifted the girl, her weight light as straw, though the burden pressed heavy into his chest. Each step toward the fading daylight made the air feel thicker, as though the desert itself knew what had been carved into her. The horizon burned low, the sun collapsing into shadow. He could not shake the image of those marks, of the way her voice clung to the word please as though it were her last breath. By the time they reached his horse, night had crept fast across the land. Somewhere in the canyons beyond, a cry rose, long, sharp, and human enough to chill the marrow. Ezekiel set her gently on the saddle, swung up behind her, and turned his horse toward home. Behind them, the barn groaned once more. And then silence. The ranch house creaked under the weight of night. Lantern light flickered against the walls, shadows crawling across beams like restless spirits. Clara lay slumped in the wooden chair by the hearth, her breath ragged, her wrists wrapped in strips of linen torn from Ezekiel's shirt. Outside, the coyotes cried. Long, wavering calls rolled across the canyon, too many voices for comfort. Ezekiel's hand shook as he poured water from the tin cup. He had seen wounds before, on men split open in war, on boys who never lived long enough to grow a beard. But the marks on her wrists, they weren't born of battle. They carried a precision that clawed at memory. Clara stirred, eyes opening just enough to catch the flame's glow. Her voice was a rasp, thin as paper. "They're not finished." The cup trembled in his grip. "Ooh." She blinked slowly, every word an effort. "The riders, they take what they want and carve what they keep. You weren't meant to find me." The floorboards groaned beneath his boots as he turned away, staring out the window. The desert stretched pale under the moon, silent except for the cry of something unseen. In the glass, his reflection looked back at him. Lined face, gray in his beard, eyes that remembered too much. A memory pressed itself forward. The roar of cannons, smoke so thick it choked the lungs, the cries of dying men left to bleed into the soil. He had stood among them once, musket heavy in his arms, hands black with powder and blood. He had promised himself never again. Clara's voice pulled him back. "They'll come. For me, and for you now." He turned. She was sitting upright, fingers clawing at the edge of the chair as though bracing against some invisible storm. Sweat glistened along her brow. "They're not bandits," she whispered. "They follow fear. The more you run, the stronger they become." The word struck like iron. Fear. He knew that enemy well. Men who smelled it on the battlefield had always pressed harder, cut deeper, killed slower. A gust rattled the shutters. The lantern swayed, shadows leaping madly across the walls. For a breathless moment, Ezekiel thought he heard voices in that wind, faint laughter threading through the night. His hand drifted to the rifle above the mantel, untouched for years. Dust coated the barrel, cobwebs stretched between the stock and wall. He gripped it, and the old would seem to remember his touch. Clara's eyes met his, sharp despite her weakness. "You fought before." Ezekiel didn't answer. His silence spoke louder than confession. The night pressed tighter against the house. Somewhere in the distance, a horse screamed, cut short by silence. Ezekiel set the rifle on the table, the weight of it cracking the air like thunder. His jaw clenched. His past had found him again. The first torch cracked in the dark like a star torn from the sky. Then another. Flames bobbed across the ridge, shadows of riders stretching long against the desert floor. Ezekiel's breath came slow. He watched from the porch, rifle across his knees, lantern extinguished. The night belonged to them now. Their laughter low, carrying like wolves circling the herd. Clara pressed herself against the wall inside, eyes wide, hands trembling around the blanket wrapped at her shoulders. Every crack of saddle leather made her flinch. Hoofbeats thundered closer, dust rising under moonlight. Ezekiel could see their faces now, scarred men with teeth bared, eyes lit by fire. One rode ahead of the rest, a broad figure with a coat that swept the ground, voice carrying like a hammer on stone. "Kane," he roared. "The Widowmaker lives after all." The name hung in the air like a curse. Clara's gasp echoed inside the house. Ezekiel's grip on the rifle tightened until his knuckles whitened. He hadn't heard that name in years, but it still fit him like an old wound. The riders fanned out, circling the ranch, torches setting the dry grass aglow. Heat licked the edges of the fence, smoke curling into the wind. Ezekiel moved with quiet purpose, his boots whispering across the floorboards. He doused the last of the lanterns, leaving the house in shadow. Hand steady now, he checked the rifle, set the revolver by his side, and slipped spare cartridges into his vest pocket. A shot rang out, sharp, taunting, splintering the top rail of his fence. Laughter followed, cruel and eager. Ezekiel answered. One pull of the trigger, one outlaw falling silent, his torch tumbling into the dirt. The laughter stopped, cut clean. Then the storm broke. Gunfire erupted from every side. Bullets smacked into the walls, tore through shutters, split wood into splinters. Clara cried out, ducking low as glass shattered beside her. Ezekiel fired back, methodical, each shot chosen, each breath measured. Another rider dropped, his body crumpling into the firelit dust. The night churned with smoke and thunder. Horses screamed, men cursed, flames spread across the yard. Ezekiel moved through it like a shadow, stitched to the earth, his rifle cracking with grim rhythm. One outlaw charged the door, hatchet raised. Ezekiel met him with a shot through the chest, the man collapsing in the doorway, boots scraping the blood-slicked boards. From the ridge, the leader watched, his torch burning brighter than the rest. He raised his gun skyward, firing once, the echo rolling like thunder across the canyon. The gang pulled back, regrouping in the dark. For a heartbeat, silence ruled again, broken only by the hiss of fire. Clara clutched her blanket tighter, her whisper carrying across the dim room. "You can't stop them all." Ezekiel's jaw set hard. Smoke curled in his beard, sweat stung his eyes, but his voice cut steady. "I don't aim to stop them all. Just enough." The yard lay broken under smoke and ash. Flames hissed through the grass, casting the ranch in red light. Men groaned in the dirt, their torches sputtering, their blood darkening the soil. Only one rider still stood tall. He stepped forward, coat dragging through the dust, hat brim shadowing his scarred face. The fire painted his grin jagged. His pistol gleamed in one hand, torch in the other. "Widowmaker," he growled. "I've been riding a long time to see you choke on your own legend." Ezekiel stepped down from the porch, rifle left behind, revolver loose in his hand. The ground crunched under his boots, the air thick with smoke. Clara watched from the broken doorway, her lips moving in a silent prayer. The outlaw spat into the dirt. "You killed my kin years back in Abilene. Took everything from me. Tonight, I bury you with the rest." Ezekiel's eyes narrowed, voice low, steady as stone. "Then take your shot, if your hand's steady enough." The night shrank to silence. No coyotes, no wind. Only two men breathing in the ash. The outlaw drew first. Flame sparked, metal flashed. Ezekiel moved like a shadow, breaking free, revolver bucking in his hand. The report cracked across the canyon like thunder. The torch fell. The outlaw staggered, gun clattering to the dirt, hand clutching his chest. He gasped, choked, and collapsed into the firelit dust. Ezekiel stood over him, smoke curling from the barrel. The silence that followed pressed heavier than the gunfire had. Clara stepped out, trembling, her face caught between relief and sorrow. Her eyes locked on him. "You saved me, but it was you." The words cut deeper than bullets. Ezekiel's breath faltered. He knew before she spoke again. "My brother," she whispered, tears breaking free. "Abilene." The revolver sagged at his side. The fire cracked, wood splintering in the distance, but he heard nothing else. Clara's gaze held both gratitude and grief, the cruel twist of salvation bound in old blood. Ezekiel turned away, eyes fixed on the horizon, the first gray light of dawn bleeding through the smoke. He holstered the revolver with hands that trembled only now when the killing was done. Behind him, the ranch smoldered. Ahead, the desert stretched, endless, empty, waiting. The storyteller's voice carries across the years. They say Ezekiel Kane walked into the canyon shadows that morning, never to be seen again. Some whisper he laid his guns beneath the sand. Others claim he still rides when night grows too quiet, when fear itself needs reckoning. But all remember the night a rancher freed the girl and stared into the horror of who he truly was.